always used to lay you clean up the messes. Down on my knees, thought I couldn't stand up on my own. Turns out sometimes you're stronger alone.
In part one of our discussion on gaslighting, we talked about what gaslighting is in general and what the effects of gaslighting look like on a person that's been subjected to it. In part two, we talked about how a person that is gaslighting you will deny the reality of what happened. In part three, we talked about how they take things that matter to you and then use those things against you for control. And now we're going to talk about something that I teased at the end of the last part in this series, and that is that there's a surprising aspect to the truth that ends up having an impact on all of us. Again, remember, the purpose of gaslighting is to get you to doubt yourself so that somebody else is the person that you're going to look to for answers. He or she with the power creates your reality. They become your reality check, and you become detached from your own thoughts, your own feelings, replacing those with the thoughts and feelings that are provided to you by the person doing the gaslighting. As we talk about this and how it was used by the cult, again, remember that these things were also seen in our families of origin. These hallmarks might have been seen in your mom, your dad, your siblings, friends, partners, workmates, etc. And you may find that you employ some of these hallmarks yourself, whether against others, or even more likely, internally against yourself, causing self-doubt. Hallmark number 3, a person that is gaslighting you will tell blatant lies right to your face. In the movie Gaslight, the husband needs everyone to believe that his wife is crazy, so that they won't listen to her if she raises concerns about his particular activities. So he sets up elaborate and brilliant lies. If somebody close to you tells a big bald-faced lie right to you, like the husband in the movie tells the wife that she steals things by planting things on her that he later finds, you almost have to believe it some, right? It's hard to believe that somebody that close to you would play you like that. You might even start to doubt yourself in the face of those lies. If I want to push you over and you're standing in front of me with 2 feet firmly planted on the ground, maybe a wide stance, it's going to take some effort, right? But if I can get you off balance, maybe with 1 foot off the ground already by confusing you in some way, maybe having you spin in circles before to see if I can then push you over once you're dizzy, it's going to be a lot easier, isn't it? And that's where an aspect of the truth comes into play. The spin, the confusion, and the use of lies to create pushovers so that you will do what you're told and move wherever they tell you that they need you to go. The truth is full of lies itself, but it also creates liars. We often talked about how honest Jehovah's Witnesses were, but were we really that honest? Were the people around us being honest? Were the people that were teaching us being honest? So you're at the convention and you look up and you see 3 nice looking people standing on the platform with the speaker ready to be interviewed. They're asked questions and they look down at their notes to give a response. Why do you think they're looking at their notes? Why can't they just answer the questions? I mean, after all, these interview situations and the questions about them are often about what happened in some real life event, right? Or maybe what they felt about something that happened. So why might they need note cards? Well, I was on a number of interviews and other parts on both circuit assemblies and at the time what were district conventions, now known as regional conventions. In one notable practice session, when asked about my spiritual goals, my goals of maybe being an elder someday and having a family weren't good enough. The district overseer was there, the circuit overseer was there, elders that I knew, I believe the presiding overseer, or today the coordinator of the body of elders. And so there were all of these men there, and they were watching what I was doing, and they were, you could tell that they were judging me. I mean, it was a practice session kind of aimed at making sure that we were conveying the right messages. So basically, I was told that perhaps my answer should be more encouraging to the brothers and sisters. I was being told that my honest answers weren't good enough. I was being pressured to lie, to make my goals bigger than they were, so as to encourage the other young people who were listening. Now, I wasn't stupid. I knew what they wanted me to say. They wanted me to say that I wanted to go to Bethel. But I knew that I didn't want to do that. And I knew that I certainly didn't want to say that because it would only make the pressure worse than it already was. So I lied and I said that I wanted to go to serve where the need was greater, reasoning in my head that, oh, the few times that I worked in unassigned territory were kind of fun. So maybe I could do that. There was a kernel of truth in what I was saying, but that wasn't what was going to be my answer at all. On another occasion, I was tasked with playing the role in the recreation of the story of a friend of mine that was actually getting baptized that day. He had been contacted in the ministry, his mom let him study, and he was going to become one of Jehovah's Witnesses. After I was done playing the part of my friend in that demonstration, and after his actual baptism that day, he would later approach me to let me know that what we did on stage was not how it happened. It was an exaggerated tale. My wife has actually also been on assembly parts and faced the same pressure to make things more than what they were. They need big stories for these annual events, don't they? And it's quite the privilege to be chosen. So you're going to do what you're asked to do, aren't you? I mean, there's a lot of pressure there to get up there and to conform and to tell a good story, to make sure that the people are as, quote, encouraged as they can be. Think about the stories that you heard in the magazines or that you read in the magazines. Do you really think they happened quite like they were related? I mean, heck, look at the quotes in those stories. Does any human being even talk like that? Or was it all planned and orchestrated to be, quote, more encouraging? Have you ever been reading one of Watchtower's publications and maybe you see dot, 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 three dots in the middle of a quote in one of the paragraphs? That's called an ellipsis. Do you know what that means? It means that part of a quote is being left out. Now, while that in itself isn't necessarily a bad thing, and that not all of a quote may be needed to make a particular point, but what if sometimes that's being used to hide parts of quotes that aren't convenient to the argument that Jehovah's Witnesses are trying to make in that very paragraph? The truth wouldn't lie, would it? My favorite example of this lie is the following, which you can look up yourself if you want. Go to jwfacts.com and use a search term misquoting sources. So we're starting to quote from a witness publication. The Greek word rendered cross in many Bible versions, torture stake in the New World Translation, is stauros. In classical Greek, this word meant merely an upright stake or pale. Later, it also came to be used for an execution stake having a crosspiece. The Imperial Bible Dictionary acknowledges this saying, quote, the Greek word for cross, stauros, properly signified a stake, an upright pole, or piece of paling on which anything might be hung, or which might be useful in impaling fencing in a piece of ground, dot, dot, dot. Even amongst the Romans, the crux from which our cross is derived appears to have been originally an upright pole. All right, so that's the book Reasoning from the Scriptures, page 89. So, there were some dots thrown in there, weren't there? Let's go see what those dots mean. Now, here's the original quote from that dictionary. The Greek word for cross, stauros, properly signified a stake, an upright pole, or a piece of paling on which anything might be hung, or which might be used in impaling or fencing in a piece of ground. Dot, dot, dot. But a modification was used as the dominion and usages of Rome extended themselves through Greek-speaking countries. Even amongst the Romans, the crux, from which the word cross is derived, appears to have been originally an upright pole and always remained the more prominent part. But from the time that it began to be used as an instrument of punishment, a transverse piece of wood was commonly added, however, not always then. And go on down. There can be no doubt, however, that the later sort was the more common, And about the period of the gospel age, crucifixion was usually accomplished by suspending the criminal on a cross piece of wood. And you can go read all of this for yourself, but we're going to dot it ourselves. But the commonest form it is understood was that in which the upright piece of wood was crossed by another near the top, but not precisely at it, the upright pole running above the other, thus a cross, and so making four, not merely two, right angles. It was on a cross of this form, according to the general voice of tradition, that our Lord suffered. It may be added that the crucifixion was abolished around the time of Constantine in consequence of the sacred associations with which the cross had now gathered around it. So that's the Imperial Dictionary, page 376. Again, you can go read all of this stuff. But the point being, as Jehovah's Witnesses, we felt so special because we knew that Jesus died on an upright stake. There was no cross. Everybody else had it wrong. And look, we even have this piece of evidence that if we bastardize it enough, if we lie, and if we remove the places that are inconvenient to our argument, we can create a scenario by which we teach this as truth and use this particular publication to support it, even if it doesn't. So that's Watchtower, once again, being caught in a lie. You can do your own research, but there are many times where they misquote scientists to make it look like maybe someone who's a known evolutionist supports their creation narrative. It's easy to do if you don't mind lying to prove your point. And if the point is to make sure that people stay in line with something, you don't care if it's true or not, you'll find what it takes, you'll practice quote mining, you'll do anything that you have to do to support the thing that you're so desperate to be true. What year was Jerusalem destroyed by the Babylonians? Was it 607 BCE, as Jehovah's Witnesses claim? A claim that they used to arrive at the year 1914 through specious math at best? Or does the historical evidence point to 587 BCE? And perhaps that would destroy their claims about 1914. Does Watchtower know that there may be issues with their claims? Have people written entire books to let them know that there's an issue? Did Ray Franz, once member of the governing body, bring this up to them and talk about it in his book, Crisis of Conscience? Do you think they're telling you the truth about that date? How were you made to feel about people outside of Jehovah's Witnesses? What were you told about them? Aren't worldly people portrayed constantly as murderers and degenerates in their publications? If you've left Jehovah's Witnesses, have you ever been surprised at how genuine and kind people are? And that doesn't mean that there aren't awful people outside of the cult any more than it means that there aren't awful people inside of the cult. People are people. But my experience has been that there are far more genuine and kind people on the outside of Jehovah's Witnesses. They lied to me. They lied to you too. If you've never heard of Plato's allegory of the cave, I'll invite you to look it up. We were given a false perception of the life that we lived and the tiny, isolated world around us in captivity and the outside world around it. Have you ever watched video of the Australian Royal Commission inquiry into child sexual abuse among Jehovah's Witnesses? Have you ever tried to talk to an active Jehovah's Witness about it? Do they believe it? Or have they been told that those matters are all, quote, apostate-driven lies, lies told to them by their governing body during talks that were held around that time? The cult poisoned the well so that they wouldn't listen to the truth about what happens inside. Or what about Jeffrey Jackson's response, governing body member Jeffrey Jackson's response to the question under oath regarding whether or not Jehovah's Witnesses believe themselves to be God's one and only chosen spokesperson on earth today? Did their fearless leader answer courageously as he would expect each one of you to do in such a circumstance? Or did he capitulate to the pressure and say that it would be presumptuous of them to make that claim, a claim that we all know they've made throughout our experiences with them? Have you ever seen videos of legal representatives for Jehovah's Witnesses testifying in courts that they don't shun their family members, that normal family relations remain, that only spiritual association is discouraged. Lies, lies, and more lies. They even have a term for it: theocratic warfare. The pressure of this environment and the lack of truth in the truth creates many situations where we all probably lied in one way or another. The truth churned out some great liars, didn't it? Let's look at a few ways it could have impacted us. Embellishing. I gave you examples earlier, right, of embellishments, making stories bigger than they really were to fit in at the congregation. But it also could have been something we did with worldly people to try to fit in. Denial, lying to ourselves about how we think and feel to force ourselves into the mold and into the expectations that were around us. Rationalizing. We all did things as Jehovah's Witnesses that we didn't want others to know about, didn't we? Pretending, just not being ourselves, spending our lives trying to be whoever other people wanted us to be. Imposter syndrome, telling ourselves that we don't belong, which in a way is a denial of self and what we truly bring to the table. Giving people false hope, cowing to the pressure of witness family and doing what they want us to do, thus leading them on and making them feel like we actually maybe do believe what they believe, like attending memorials just to make them happy. Living a double life. I think that one pretty much speaks for itself. Covering up mistakes or maybe deflecting and blaming other people for those things. Being in a cult is a harsh and very perfectionistic environment. Because of that, we may have found ourselves lying to save face. Obviously, I could go on and on and on, but being in the truth is not a place of actual truth. It's an upside down and backwards dystopia that puts us in inauthentic positions at every turn. It forces self denial. It makes us lie to ourselves and others, and it lies to us as well. A lot of ex Jehovah's Witnesses I meet are good liars. We were not just trained to do so, it was a coping mechanism to get by in such a dysfunctional environment. What about you? Maybe you don't know who you are, so you still try to be whoever anybody else wants you to be. Maybe you still find yourselves in these situations with Jehovah's Witnesses where you find yourself lying to keep their unhealthy relationships. Perhaps you struggle to take ownership of your own life and live in avoidance, not being honest with yourself. Or maybe you're so hard on yourself for any even perceived mistake that you tend to deflect and maybe even push the responsibility off onto others. It doesn't have to be that way, and you can find better days and more authenticity and more honesty. If you're struggling to move past the cult of Jehovah's Witnesses and the impacts on your life, I work with many individuals daily in my cult recovery coaching practice at exjwhelp.com. That's exjwhelp.com. I'm also working hard to bring in new resources to the community through efforts to lift individuals up financially through job opportunities, marketing for small businesses, network opportunities. You can go to theuprisingproject.com and read about our mission and how to join in if you'd like to move forward and maybe find new prospects for yourself. Next time, we're going to talk about a few other ways that Jehovah's Witnesses use gaslighting to confuse you and throw you off balance, to create doubt in your own mind, maybe even to get you to do things that you wouldn't ordinarily do otherwise. If you have an idea for something that you'd like to see discussed, go to shunnedpodcast.com and submit it through the contact page. So until the next episode, love yourself and others, do no harm, and go be happy.